I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 20th, 2015 Papillion City Council meeting to order. Ms. Butler, would you please take the roll?
Florence. Here. Mumgard. Here. Gaines. Glover. Here. Jaworski. Here. Klug. Here. Stubbe. Here. Ingberg. Here.
I wanted to start up here because we've got some scouts with us tonight. They're going to help lead the Pledge of Allegiance. You guys want to come up? Do we have an affidavit of publication on file?
That is correct.
And a current copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the council chambers. Mr. Hoynes, Administrator's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I think a couple of days ago I sent you an electronic picture of the Veterans Park update. Councilman Ingberg mentioned that last time. It's improved even more. Those sight lines have changed pretty dramatically. Bring that up, just to let you know it's updated and on track to be finished for our event on November 11th. But also, one of the things that Mayor Black really pursued in the beginning has really come to fruition is it's been a true partnership with the community, and we just here within the last couple of days got a letter that the Lions Club is donating $4,500. I think, Mr. Glover, you're part of the Lions Club, aren't you? So appreciate that with those folks to help out with that particular cause. Earlier this afternoon, council members, and I did mention my last meeting, the operational analysis for the potential Master Parks funding plan that's ongoing, met with PRO and discussed their role in that and their particular uses and how that would impact their organization. I think the meeting went very well. That group of folks and President Jeff Knipping have been very valuable in this process in the design of that. And so if any PRO people interact with you, ask any questions on that, certainly I can help them, Jeff can help them, but I think that meeting went pretty well. Also going to be attending a meeting tomorrow night at the school district. Received an invitation. I believe it's a public meeting the school district is holding on the impact of the learning community to the Papillion La Vista School District. The school district did ask for some input from the city's perspective, and I did provide that and will be attending that meeting. If any of you aren't doing anything tomorrow night, I think you may find that interesting to go down there. It's certainly impeding the economic developments of the city of Papillion that we've had to discuss far too many times. Conclude my report this evening, Mr. Mayor, by reminding council members the dedication of the Public Works Building, October 30th. What time, Marty? At 1 to 3. And is there a special event, a time? Yeah, so come early because I think the ribbon cutting is early on that. And if you haven't already, if you could please RSVP to Nicole so she can keep track and make sure that you're appropriately recognized. That concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays.
The motion passes. I do want to point out specifically one item. I don't see him here. Is Cedric or Desiree here? Oh, you want to stand up real quick? I just want to introduce you. Cedric Fishpan, this is related item C5. La Voltaire was pulling a special designated liquor license for an event at La Petite. Cedric is the owner of both of those. Born and raised in France and trained in France, and a true chef, probably the only one in the metro area, aren't you? As far as a trained French chef. Really want to thank you for bringing La Petite Bakery to Papillion. It is a legitimate French bakery, so thank you for that. And I understand, that's why I wanted you to stand up, I understand you were just inducted into the Omaha Restaurant Hall of Fame. Congratulations and thank you. Item E1, Ordinance 1691, an ordinance to approve the change of zone of certain real property within the zoning jurisdiction of the City of Papillion, Sarpy County, Nebraska, legally described as a replatting of Lot 383 Eagle Ridge, generally located on the southwest corner of Fall Creek Road and Cornhusker Road, from community commercial CC to single-family residential medium-density R2 and urban family residential R3 and mixed-use MU, to amend the official zoning map of the City of Papillion by changing the zoning district boundaries of the zoning map in accordance with Section 20532 of the Papillion Municipal Code and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing and call for proponents, and I believe Mr. Pollard with Lampreerson is here for the applicant. And if you'd state your name for the record.
Good evening, Ken Pollard with Lampreerson and Associates, 14710 West Dodge Road. And I know this is for the change of zone, but would you like me to give the presentation now? And
Go ahead.
Okay.
On the subsequent item, we'll just reference this for the minute purposes.
I know I need you. Well, this has been a long road to get to this point, and I know we're not done, but pretty straightforward development, although there's been a lot of hurdles and negotiating and compromising, not only with ourselves and the city staff, but also the SID board and the attorneys and the developer. I think everybody's worked very hard to make this happen. So, like I said, pretty straightforward development. We've got 31 single-family residential lots on the south half of the site. These lots are comparable in size to the existing lots to the south within Eagle Ridge. There'll just be one public street bisecting those 31 lots, and then the north half would be commercial, kind of your typical residential neighborhood amenities in these strip areas, possibly a coffee shop, possibly a small convenience store. Access points are pretty straightforward. We're tying into the existing intersections at these two locations on Eagle Ridge Drive. We'd have a couple more on Fall Creek Road. Like I said, the only public improvement as far as streets go would be Skyhawk. Anything internal to the commercial would be private development. As part of the negotiations with the city and the SID, we are going to be installing a traffic signal at Cornhusker Road and Eagle Ridge Drive. Other little nuances, we've got an outlot down here for water quality. We're getting some connectivity between the neighborhood and the commercial via a trail and access easement between these two lots. Like I said, fairly straightforward plan. If there's any questions that anybody has, I'll be available to answer.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mumgard.
Yeah, maybe you're not the right person to ask, but there's something that was brought up during the Planning Commission discussion that I find real interesting. Somebody came up and questioned the amount of debt that this would add to the SID, specifically saying about close to about $500,000 in debt would be added. Is that accurate?
About $412,000 in geodebt would be allocated to the existing SID. Yes.
What's geodebt? Yeah, with geodebt, that would be general obligation.
Correct.
Specifically for what?
That would include things like intersection paving. So there's a little bit on each of these intersections. Some of the erosion control items, the bulk of it is storm sewer and the traffic signal.
Guess on the other side of the coin, do you have any estimate on what the added valuation will be for the land after the development?
We do. Let me grab that.
Ms. Myers?
Yeah, if any staff has answers to that question, that'd be helpful to me. Thank you.
It appears it's about 13 million.
Okay. Well, I'll wait till the end. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other proponents? Anybody want to speak in favor? And again, if you'd state your name for the record.
Evening, I'm Bob Trummer. I'm the chairman of the Board of Trustees for SID 141, which is the owner of, or the ones that monitor the lot 383. This has been on our agenda since we first formed as a board. Mr. Rogers was at our first meeting, as a matter of fact. It's been talked about at every one of our SID meetings to varying degrees. A lot of negotiation, as Ken has said, has gone into the discussion of what's to go up there. As a board, we wanted to make sure that whatever went was amenable to not only Mr. Rogers and developer, but also the neighborhood. So along those lines, we took as many steps as possible to keep people informed, posting them as to what was being developed. We had a town hall meeting to raise any issues that people may have. We even did a survey of not only Eagle Ridge, but the neighboring communities in Eagle Hills, Eagle Crest, Settlers Creek, to find out what kind of businesses would be neighborhood friendly that might be put into that area up front. Two of our trustees met with Walt to go over the results of that, and so he has that as a marketing tool to go out and solicit vendors to maybe occupy some of that property. Of the survey, we did have 191 respondents, which is pretty good for that area of town. We have approved this development. We are going forward with it. We've built a cooperative bridge, I like to think, with the developer, trying to make sure that whatever goes in there, we'll try to help them out as much as possible. And we're just trying to put this one to bed. I do have another trustee here who can kind of go over a little bit of the question on what we did look at, the amount of debt that we were going to incur. We balanced that with what we had to do. We think this is the most equitable use of that land that we can that has been proposed to us, and we're ready to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Ingberg.
If I could just ask you one question. You know, I applaud the fact that you all worked together, came to some resolution to get this ongoing thing taken care of. But my question is, do you have as a board any concern about with additional debt that it may have some impact on how soon you're annexed?
You know, whatever goes in there is going to incur debt. You know, so the amount of debt that we had, we looked at that. You know, there's we also have to look at quality of life for that area, and so this is a much better utilization from that, from a neighborhood perspective, than a multi-complex or something like that going in.
Well, I certainly understand that, and I applaud that. I was just curious to see if you had some discussion about that.
I do. As a matter of fact, Al, if you want to kind of, he's my finance guru, and he can kind of go over a little bit of the numbers that we discussed. Again, all this was gone over at all the SID board meetings, and we tried to do as good a due diligence on this as we could to get the best deal for both parties.
I want to thank you too. Not all the SID boards, I think, actually understand everything that they deal with, and actually communicating to the residents, it doesn't always happen either. And one of the things we always encourage the developers to talk to the neighborhoods, but if the neighborhood's not organized, that's an incredibly impossible task for the developer. And the fact that you guys did that communication really helped everybody, so thank you.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to have a lot of good board members to cover me.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if you'd state your name for the record.
I'm Ellis Stevens. I live at, me and my wife live at 2009 Skyhawk, which is, which should be right over here, basically, right over there. And first of all, as a homeowner, me and my wife certainly support this development. I've sort of been involved with a number of the prior development that was going on and that type of stuff. And about 2 years ago, Mike Rogers called me and said he had an idea for the development and wanted to know if I could get some neighbors together to go over it, which we did. And we had about, I think, 10 or 12 neighbors, something like that. And all the neighbors said it was a good idea. So then, after that, Mike sort of got started, and I think he met with the existing SID board at that time, and also SID board 184, because they're also affected a little bit. Basically, I brought this, so I think this will answer maybe some of your both of your questions, and I'm going to put it on the screen here, if that's all right. Myself and let's see, let me get this right here. Myself and Scott Gavin, who is an additional trustee. He's a realtor with RE/MAX, and we've been working on this for the whole project since last October. One of our big concerns was that we wanted to try to make sure that the financial obligation that we might have wouldn't negatively affect our homeowners that are currently there. So, in working with Ken, Mike Rogers, and we also had a meeting with Jeff Thompson and Mark Sturzma earlier this year to go over a lot of things, and we finally got to an agreement, and that was that we would contribute up to a max of $412,000 for the general obligation expenses. That's going to, and almost 159,000 is for a stoplight, or the signal there on Cornhusker. This is a signal that the residents in the neighborhood have asked for a long time. And that's a shared cost with Sarpy County and as well as Rogers Development. But that is our cost, which is part of the $412,000. That's going to create an annual bond payment on a 20-year bond of about $35,500. In addition to our debt that we have about $1.9 million right now that will be paid off in 2022. But this will add to that. So that's what we sort of expect when the construction bonds are turned into long-term bonds, that's about our payment that will be. And we actually increased our interest percentage by 0.5% in case the bonds will go up. Then what we did is we looked at what the new evaluation of the new development will be, and Scott and myself we feel a very conservative number. It's more conservative than what is on the SID estimate of cost as far as the assessed valuation. The 15 single-family homes we have at an assessed value of about $245,000 each. In talking with Walt, who's the agent for Mr. Rogers, he feels that those homes will probably sell between $275,000 and $300,000. And on their debt ratio sheet, their assessed value is about $262,000. On the villas, we have them valued at $205,000, and they have them valued at $237,000. Then on the commercial land, we said, and we talked to Mr. Rogers a little bit about this, as well as some other people. We said, that could lag a little bit as far as the construction goes and the buildup on that. So we only put the valuation in at $3 a square foot, a very conservative number, because it could be a year or 2, 3 years, however long it takes to get the valuation up, the property built. So that gives us, we looked at a total valuation of $7,827,000 versus on the SID estimate of cost provided to us by Ken Pollard, they have $14,800,000. So then we looked at how we were what kind of revenue this was going to bring in. And the tax bond revenue on the new evaluation for the bond fund, using 35 cents per 100 is going to bring us in 27,400 basically. Our current bond levy is 34 cents. So we'd have to raise the levy 1 cent for the whole district. And that's the second line there. The 1 cent on the rest of the district would bring in 7,700. Then the tax on the general fund for the new development, our tax levy for that is 26 cents a thousand. So that would bring us in another 20,353. And then I had to do an adjustment, Scott and I had to do an adjustment for the current tax that we're receiving of about $8,000. So the net tax revenue is going to be approximately 47,000. To cover that, 35. So to summarize this a little bit, we have 47,000 in net tax revenue. Our debt payment's going to be 35, and we think we can offset our 1 cent raise on the bond fund in our general fund. So for the whole district, so that our district would stay at our current tax levy, so we wouldn't have to raise anything. Obviously these are estimates, how fast stuff is going to happen, but we feel we've taken a very conservative approach to this. And worst case scenario, we are in the process of going through and repairing streets right now, and we have spent $300,000 to give you an idea on our street project. However, we have about $200,000 more to go, and we're doing that in increments of $50,000 a year, and that's out of our general fund. And we have the worst part of our streets done, but we need to just fix them up a little bit more. Worst case scenario, we could drop those numbers down because it's not quite as urgent as what they were. That's the story.
So to your point on the conservative approach, you mentioned the commercial you did at $3 a square foot.
Yes.
So you basically have factored in zero commercial development because that's the dirt value.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct, because we felt it would lag behind a little bit.
Mr. Mumgard.
Okay, I'm going to turn to Ms. Myers, our annexation expert here. Assuming these numbers are correct, I think you're telling us that you envision a $12,000 per year positive outcome, 47,000 minus 35,000.
No, it's almost a break even. It's at 3,500 down on the bottom, Mr. Rumgard, because I have to take out the.
Okay.
Let me look at this once. I have to take out the current tax that we're receiving on that land right now. That's at 8,500 down on the bottom, because I'm using full valuation on the top part.
Oh, I thought that net tax revenue, that's 47,553.
That's correct.
That's your net after you take that out.
No, that's before we take that out.
Oh.
So it would be a net of about 39,000.
Okay, so it's just maybe a 4,000,
Yep.
hardly even, a little over a 10% increase. Okay. Now I'll turn to Ms. Myers. I know annexation questions are answered by numbers, in and out. If his numbers are correct, what does this mean to the speed at which we can annex that area?
Well, generally, Mr. Mumgard, I would take a look at the application if I'm consistent in the way that I process the annexation results and take a look at the potential 13 million in valuation versus the 412 general obligation, which is less than our 4% debt to value that we would allow a new SID. So it falls within compliance of what we generally would allow. So if I'm looking in reality and numbers, I have to wait until those real numbers appear before I can give you a direct answer, but it meets our guidelines relative to what we would be doing. And for even annexation purposes, this particular piece of the puzzle would be fit within our annexation guidelines.
Does that mean that it would not be expected to either increase the speed or delay the annexation?
Well, certainly there's no doubt, as Mr. Stevens indicated, they're going to issue a 20-year bond for that $412,000. So any time in advance of the 20 years we would annex, we would absorb that, but that would just be part of the normal process that we would look at.
But if the valuation produces revenue to pay that bond, that's a zero. And so it means nothing to how fast we get to annex the place.
That's correct.
So if you take away that it's neutral, the biggest benefit is getting the commercial developed. And that'll tip it over. A little bit positive.
I realize that there's a bit of a dilemma. You can't leave the land sitting there empty just so that there's no debt. You got to do something with it, and as the previous guy said, that there's always going to be some debt. But then on the other hand, I'm very eager to get your community into our city limits.
Our
And
homeowners are eager.
Yeah, I've heard from them. And so I want to make sure that we're going into this with our eyes open as to what it will or won't mean toward that goal of annexing the Eagles, basically.
I think the debt ratio on this was like 2.8. And for our SID, it's the last report we got, which we haven't got a recent one. It's been about 2 years. I think our debt ratio was 3.2 or something like that, in that range.
Okay, now I'm going to make a recommendation that some people think would be heresy. But when you show there at the bottom that you then take a penny off of your general fund levy to offset the penny you add to your bond levy, I say don't do that. That areas such as yours should have as high of a tax levy as you can possibly afford, because in the long run that saves you money, because as long as you use that money to pay down your debt, that gets you inside the city, and for many, many reasons then saves the individual homeowner money. So I'm with you until you hit and I understand why you would want to make it a balance of a zero.
I mean, that's something that obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the future and stuff like that, and where we're going to be. But I happen to agree with you that like 1 cent is probably have an average evaluation probably of $200,000 to $220,000 on the homes in Eagle Ridge. So that's $22 a year. Now we did have a situation, and in 2013 our tax levy was a total of 60. Last summer, the prior board, because there was some miscommunication, I believe, with the accountant when we talked to the CPA, and the budget did not include, even though the board had funds and they wanted to do the street repair, the budget did not include the $300,000 for street repair. So the levy was dropped to 50 cents, which does not even really cover our expenses and if we want to do stuff. This year, we knew that couldn't work. We had to raise it back up to 60. And I mean, myself and Jennifer Edson, who's another trustee, were at the meeting, and we did not agree with that, but we weren't on the board.
Well, I understand. Well, and I appreciate that both the political problem in espousing that kind of a raise of taxes. I'm aware of a neighborhood up nearby where I live. Years ago, that's exactly what they did. They sped up annexation by about 5 years, I think. And I don't think the people who lived there ever regretted it.
Yeah. The homeowners in Eagle Ridge, we would love to get annexed, I believe.
Well, I've got a term of another 3 years here, and I want to see you annexed within that 3 years. And I've told the mayor that should be a goal for him too. So
all right.
when I look at this, I think, well, if this isn't the best possible plan to get you guys annexed, then we need to step back and rethink. So thank you for your information.
I think with the commercial, you're going to get, the city's going to get some sales tax off of that, and
Only if we annex.
yeah. So
Appreciate it.
Okay?
Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Anybody want to speak against? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Next is item E2, Ordinance 1723, an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Section 1, delineating the voting boundary wards of the City of Papillion, to repeal the existing Chapter 24, Section 1, and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Item E3, Ordinance 1726, an ordinance to amend in its entirety subsection 5116C8 of Chapter 51, City Administrator of the Papillion Municipal Code, having to do with the City Administrator's duties and powers to serve as a purchasing agent of the city and to manage and supervise purchases and contracts for all departmental supplies and services, to provide for repeal of conflicting ordinances, and to provide for an effective date. This is a public hearing. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Close the public hearing. Item F1, Resolution R15-0160, a public hearing and a vote. A resolution to approve the preliminary plat for the property legally described as Lot 383, Eagle Ridge, generally located on the southwest corner of Cornhusker Road and Fall Creek Road. The applicant is Rogers Development, Inc. This is a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. I'll call for proponents, but to the earlier point, all the previous comments will carry over to this item as well. So do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? I'll close the public hearing. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R15-0160? Motion by Councilman Jaworski. Second by Councilman Ingberg. Any council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next is item F2, Resolution R15-0172, a resolution to approve the Second Amendment to the Ashbury Farm Subdivision Agreement. Do we have a motion to approve Resolution R15-0172? Motion by Councilwoman Klug. Second by Councilman Stubbe. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any Oh, go ahead. And if you'd state your name for the record.
Nancy Predall with Lampreneerson, 14710 West Dodge Road, here on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other proponents? Do we have any opponents? Any council discussion? Please vote.
Seven yeas, 0 nays.
It's all the regular action items, and I don't believe any committees have met. Do we have any comments from the floor? Seeing no... We do. We do have some students. You missed me. You guys, the students need to come to the podium and give us your name and tell us why you're here. And I'm assuming it's Mr. Keller's class. Come on up and introduce yourselves. And it's not just the ones in the front row.
I am Jessa Westcott, and I'm here for Mr. Keller's government class.
I'm Kobe Riedel, and I'm also here for Mr. Keller's government class.
I'm Kennedy Raymond, and I'm here for Mr. Keller's government class.
I'm Paige Oswald, and I'm here for Mr. Keller's government class.
I'm Amanda Kiefer, and I'm here for Mr. Keller's government class.
Scouts, you got to come up and introduce yourself as well. And the first one, tell us what troop you're with and who your sponsoring organization is.
Yeah.
Where you meet.
I'm Luke Stursma. We are with Troop 435.
And where do you meet?
We meet at Harvey Oaks Elementary School.
Okay.
I am Simon Russell, also Troop 345.
I'm Ness Pasica, also Troop 435.
I am Connor Hoos, also from Troop 435.
Thanks for traveling all the way from Harvey Oaks down to Papillion. Mr. Stursma, the planning director, is involved in that. That was his son. So thank you guys for coming down. Do we have any other comments from the floor? Any council comments? A couple of updates from the last couple of weeks. want to thank, I think, almost all of the council and staff. We were able to have an employee appreciation event out at Sumter Amphitheater just to have a time to sit back as elected officials and say thank you to all of the employees for making Papillion the second best place in the United States. So that was a nice, relaxing event to be able to get us together to do that. So thank you for taking time out to do that. I also attended a meeting of the Downtown Business Association. They've really gotten active, and they're doing a lot of plans, and the merchants themselves are saying that they're seeing quite an uptick in business, and a lot of that is people coming into Papillion to come to their stores, and then they're also seeing old-time Papillion people coming back to downtown into the stores. And we've got 2 new businesses that are opening up down there that should be having ribbon cuttings. One's in the basement of the Bell Shops, and one's on the 2nd floor of the Bell Shops. So now that's completely full. So they're doing some great things, and they're having another sip and wine walk next weekend. I think that'll be their 3rd one for the year. We also had the ribbon cutting for the Carpenters Union facility. It's a beautiful facility if you're not familiar with it. It's a regional training center for carpenters, so we've got people coming in for training on a regular basis. An important note, though, they've got a large community room, and they want to spread the word that that is available for civic organizations. So if somebody's looking for meeting space, different civic groups, not-for-profits, they can reach out to the Contractors Union, and they'll make that room available. Mr. Ingram with the American Legion and myself met with Cliff Pratt about the Veterans Day event. A lot of you know Cliff. He was a longtime principal in the school district, but the reason we were meeting with him is he's going to be the keynote speaker at the Veterans Day event. Cliff was a World War II Army paratrooper, but then he also went into the Air Force, and he was in the Korean War and the Vietnam War, so he saw all 3 conflicts and then came here and served as a principal, so he's going to be the keynote speaker. So make sure you show up for that. I'm looking forward to that. Also, yesterday, went out to Papillion La Vista South, met with the DECA students, talked about communication and marketing from a city perspective, and then Mr. Hoynes, Ms. Myers, Ms. Hipsey, and myself had a call today with Moody's. They're doing a reevaluation of our bond rating, and so we had that call today. So hopefully we'll see if we retain our Moody's bond rating. We're pretty high level. We're at investment grade, so I'd be very surprised if we go up, but I'll be shocked if we go down. I think we'll get a reiteration of our current bond rating. It was a very positive call. And then met just before the meeting with the Scouts, so thank you guys again for coming out. Just a couple of reminders. Oh, big congratulations. Becky Sims is in the back. Since she came on board, she worked with staff, Ms. Myers and the board and her staff, and put together a pretty comprehensive strategic plan. And the Nebraska Library Commission has accepted that for purposes of accreditation. So that's a very, very big step. So congratulations and thank you for that. A couple of other reminders. October 30th, as Mr. Hoynes mentioned, is the Public Works dedication at 1. And then November 11th at 11 a.m. is the Veterans Park ceremony with Cliff. So come out for that as well. We do have a closed session tonight. So I will. Is there a motion to go into closed session to protect the public interest to discuss litigation regarding Schramm Road special assessments? Motion by Councilman Stubbe. Second by Councilwoman Klug. Do we have any proponents? Do we have any opponents? Do we have any council discussion? Please vote.
7 yeas, 0 nays.
I will state for the record the purpose of the closed session is to only discuss litigation regarding Schramm Road special assessments. The closed session will include the mayor, city council, city administrator, assistant city administrator, city attorney, and city clerk.